Hello, Jan here. Welcome back to the channel, and very welcome if you're new here, and if you've been with me a while then welcome back, and welcome to Vlogmas 10. If you've been with me a while and you think you've already seen 10, I made an error on number 9 and called it 10, so I'm going to have to change the title of that one, because this one is the real 10. Number 9 was cleaning underneath the kitchen cupboards. And I've been using the Vlogmas uploads to take you through the story of my Christmases, and really the history of how I went from loving Christmas as it being the best thing ever through to where I am now, where I don't celebrate anything at all. I just step right out of the whole festive season and don't have anything to do with it. So the story so far, which you can catch up on previous Vlogmases, has all been really good, really happy memories. Everything was going really well. I've got to the stage where as an adult I'm hosting Christmas at my house. You know, my sister and her boyfriend or husband or whoever she was with at the time would come to me. Mum and Dad would come to me, and anybody and everybody was welcome at my Christmas table. And you know, I loved Christmas when I had children of my own, and children really make the whole thing, don't they? That it brings that magic back into it when they have that belief in all the wondrous things that are going on. It's just so wonderful. And then, you know, my children got a little bit older. My daughter started school, and one day just before Christmas she came home really upset. This isn't why I cancelled Christmas, this is something else. She came home really upset, and I said, what on earth's the matter? And she said, the headmistress had sent a message that she had to go and see her. And so one of the boys in her class started saying to her, oh, you're in trouble, you're really in trouble, you've been naughty, you're in trouble. And she just got so upset, because she was a good little girl and she didn't do anything wrong, but she was so upset that she was really in a lot of trouble. So the next day I took her into school and I marched straight into the headmistress's office, and I said, what on earth is going on? She was so upset last night. And the headmistress in question said, well, I did want to see her. She said, I was going to ask her to be Mary in the school play, you know, the nativity play. But she said, but she didn't come, so I've given the role to somebody else. And I was mortified, because the one thing that I had always wanted was the role of Mary when I was little. But I ended up being an angel. But as it was, because my daughter missed out on her chance to be Mary, she also became an angel. And so it was like 20 years apart, a family tradition of being angels. So she had the white dress and the tinsel. So that again was still a happy memory. You know, it was wonderful to see the nativity and really enjoyed that. However, I have to say I have never forgiven that little boy. I mean, it wouldn't have been done with malice, it's just kids, but here I am all these years later, I still keep thinking about it. My son is 2 years younger than my daughter, so it was only a 2-year period in between her having nativity plays a couple of years in a row and his turn. But by the time he got to that age, they had stopped doing a nativity play altogether. It had become so what's the word I'm looking for without insulting anybody, but they had tried to make it so multicultural, multi this, multi that, woke, you name it, politically correct. They had just stopped doing a Christian nativity. And so my son's first Christmas, it was so long ago, I've got no idea what they called it. All I remember about that first one is that that there were woodland animals, and he was a little mouse, and he came running into the because it's done in the hall, and you know, all the mums and dads get to sit on chairs, and then the kids come into the front, and he came running in. All the little kids had their little paws up, and they were wearing stockings, ladies' tights on their head that had ears sewn onto them. Some of them had little tails. But he was a mouse. He was a little dormouse. I have no idea what the story was, what the relevance was to Christmas. I have no idea whatsoever how that all came about. The following year, he was again again, it wasn't at all religious. It was based around the song, the 12 Days of Christmas. And so they had various little children doing, you know, everything from a partridge in a pear tree right the way along. He was one of the 11 Lords of Leaping, and they had dressed up 11 little boys in football kit, you know, soccer kit, and so he came in as you know, shorts, football shirt and football scarf, and he was one of the 11 Lords of Leaping. But that was it for his years in infant school. There was, after that, I don't remember when they went to junior school. I don't remember either of them having carol services at all. So it was just and then when still carried on doing Christmas at home, we were still doing the decorations, the tree, the dinner, the presents. It still carried on as normal, with everyone coming to me up until my daughter was 10 and my son was 8. And that Christmas, I had gone back to work full time. I think I'd gone back something around about the September. But whenever it was, I had said to my parents and my sister and anybody else who'd been to me in the past that, you know, I'm now working full time, I'm raising 2 kids and I'm running a home on my own. I can't put on Christmas. I just don't have the time or the energy to do all that. Somebody else will have to do it this year, and we'll come to you. And that's when things started to go really, for me, it was that first Christmas when, just before Christmas, you know, I'd been waiting for my invitation or our invitation, and there was nothing. And when I said to my sister, what are you doing for Christmas? You know, and she said, oh, I've arranged to go to friends. And that was it. She was going to friends, and I'm out of the picture. And so my mum and dad, you know, what's happening for Christmas? Oh, we've booked a restaurant. And nothing to do with me or the kids. And for me, at that point, I was so hurt. You know, I had for so many years worked so hard, and we didn't get any invites for Christmas at all. So that Christmas, it was just me, my 2 children. My ex-husband was out of the picture at this time. And it was just literally me and my children. I cooked a Christmas dinner. I gave them presents, you know, tried to make it as good as I could for them. But by the time I'd done the washing up after dinner, I was frankly bored. I got the ironing out, and I remember them both getting upset and saying, it's Christmas Day, you can't do the ironing. And I thought, well, there's a pile of ironing that needs doing and I've got nothing else to do. So I did the ironing, and it kind of really was never the same after that. Years subsequent to that, you know, all the years following, because our shop, I worked at duty free at the airport, I would always volunteer to work Christmas. That first year, because I had children, they had ensured that I was rostered off so that I could be with my children. But after that, I just thought there's no point. There's no point me being off work. Because by this time, by the second year onwards, I was management, I was salaried. So the only opportunity that I had to earn any money over and above my salary was by working Christmas Day. That was the only day that I could get overtime. And if I worked the Christmas Day shift, then I would get triple time plus, I think it was 2 or 3 days in lieu. So I just started volunteering to work Christmas Day, and I still tried to make it as good as I could for the children, but they knew that because I was earning more money, I could do better. We would have a better home, a better life, because I just had that bit more money. And so I just worked Christmas as much as I could. I would still try and make it, as I say, as Christmassy as I could, both for my kids at home, and also there was one year in particular when I used to feel sorry for the people working who had to work. So I'd pretty much cooked Christmas dinner on Christmas Eve and then took in a whole load of cold things, like you normally have a buffet on Boxing Day. I'd taken all of that into work and laid it out in the office. So when people were on their break, instead of going off to the staff canteen, they could just go in and get a plate full of stuff, eat it out there, and then come back into work. And so, you know, I was still making an effort, but it was sort of around about this time that I kind of gave up doing Christmas cards. I haven't got any places in my house to put cards, so cards coming in started to get on my nerves, and this especially once I was back at work. You know, some Christmases I was writing out hundreds of cards because everyone at work had one, all the neighbours had one, all the family had one. It just got so silly, so many of them. At some point during those years, I just said, enough, I'm not writing any more cards. I'm just not doing any cards anymore. It's more important that I keep in contact with you throughout the year and make an effort at other times rather than just write a card once a year. So I stopped doing cards. By the time I was 36, and I remember this because I had an operation just before Christmas, and my sister was horrified when she brought me home from hospital that I'd said no decorations. And she said, well, you can't have no decorations at Christmas. And I thought, well, why not? Why should I have decorations where I think by this time my daughter had already left home? I only remember my son being around at that time, and I don't know whether he was going to friends on Christmas Day or something, but I just thought there's just no point doing decorations. And so my sister had bought me one of these little trees. It was a real tree, but it was a smaller one. Because for some reason it upset her that I wasn't doing Christmas, even though for all these years she hadn't bothered to be a part of my Christmas. You know, it wasn't something that she was interested in doing. So, you know, things had just taken this... Sorry, I can hear Neil in the next room and it's putting me off. So, I just... And then, yeah, as I say, my daughter had left home by this time, and then she'd gone into the hospitality industry, and so did my son initially. I mean, he was a chef for, I think, 16 years. And they started working Christmas Day, so it meant they were working Christmas Day. So even when I left my job at the airport, it still wasn't a family Christmas because my parents had moved far, far away. My sister had moved away, so neither of them were local. And I was quite happy to do nothing. You know, I kind of really lost the Christmas spirit entirely. I had, once I'd become open with my paganism, I'd shifted my celebration onto Yule. So it didn't bother me at all that Christmas wasn't happening, because I would go and celebrate Yule with other people within the pagan community. So that went some way towards bringing a bit of festive spirit back. And although I wasn't doing so much of the tinsel and commercial decorations, I was bringing in greenery and foliage from outside. So I would kind of decorate, but not the way that most people do. And then of course I met Neil, and he was used to doing Christmas with his family, and they had some really strong family traditions. I mean, we all have our own traditions, don't we? One tradition that I had when I was doing Christmas was when everybody came to me for Christmas dinner, and I was a prolific present giver, we would eat dinner, and then before dessert we'd start opening presents, because everybody's so full after the dinner. You could do with an hour, 2 hours off before you have dessert. So we used to have this massive gift exchange in between dinner and dessert, which was the kids had their Santa presents in the morning, and that they used to get a big present, and then they used to get a pillowcase full of smaller presents. So it would only be their presents from aunts, uncles, nan, grandad, that sort of thing would be after dinner. But I loved this after dinner tradition of adults not opening until the afternoon. And one year, normally I would buy presents the same as everybody else, and I did still buy everybody a present, but I had decided that I was going to make everybody something. And I used to do a lot of knitting in those days. I don't anymore because of the arthritis I've got in my hand and my shoulder. But I decided to knit everybody a present. So I think I did my sister a pair. I think it must have been Chris, my sister, who got the Fair Isle leg warmers. It was back in the 80s when it was all Jane Fonda and leg warmers and things. I'd done my mum. I was going to show it to you, but I'm not even sure where it is now. I kept it after she died. But I'd done her like a lacy bed jacket. I'd done my dad an Aran jumper. Everybody, because I've got a photo somewhere, and I've got everything that was done for the Christmas gifts was all laid out, and a photo of everything in that. But I can't remember what else was in there. But it was just, I've made everybody something. So it was a gift from the heart because it was handmade for them. I used to make my dad jumpers quite often, actually. I don't know why, he didn't need them, but I think it was just a nice way of showing him that I cared. So, like I say, Neil and I had met. We're both pagans, so we were both doing Yule, but he was also doing his, had, before he met me, got this really big family tradition of Christmas Day and Boxing Day. And because they are such a lovely family, they had wanted me to go and join in with that. But by then, I'm just so down on Christmas. I didn't want to have anything to do with Christmas. And I used to say to Neil, well, you go off, you have the day with your family, you join in with all the things that your family does, and enjoy it. And we'll have done Yule a few days before. So Neil and I were building our Yule traditions, and then he was going off to do his Christmas thing elsewhere. And that pretty much carried on right up until 2007. And then 2007, it was the day before Yule, or the night before Yule, we got a phone call. It was my dad, and he was thinking about getting a new boiler. So he'd phoned because he wanted, Neil's a heating engineer, so he'd wanted to have a chat with Neil about getting this boiler and what type of boiler he should get, and all the technical details. He wanted to have a chat with Neil, but because I'd answered the phone to start with, I ended up having a really long chat with him as well. So the whole conversation probably went on for an hour, hour and a half, you know, between the two of us, and covering all the different topics of what he'd done, what Mum had done. You know, we had this really, really good chat. But then the following morning, I got another telephone call. This time it was from a mum. Daddy had a stroke. He's in hospital. So he'd been rushed into hospital. He had had a cataclysmic stroke. Literally everything that was my dad had died that day on Yule. It had happened very, very early hours of the morning. And so that kind of put a real dampener on Yule, you know, because then every Yule after that, it was like, it's a year since I lost Daddy, 2 years since I lost Dad. I mean, Dad was 84 when he died. Mum, straight after Dad had died, or very soon after, she'd had a bad fall and broken her hip, which meant that she needed to have a lot of attention and care. When Dad had died, I'd stayed with her until the funeral and then came home, but then I was backwards and because she lived in Cornwall, you know, it's a good long drive. I think it was about a 4.5 hour drive each way, so I was backwards and forwards, you know, going down, staying with her for a week. But then she broke her hip, and it got to the stage where my sister, who lived near her, was doing most of the care, and she got to the stage where she said, I just can't do this anymore, I'm going to put her in a home. And I've got very, very strong feelings about not putting her in a home. In fact, when Dad had died, or on the way down to Cornwall when Dad was dying, I actually said to Neil, I don't know what's going to happen to Mum. I don't know if she's going to end up going in a home. And he said, she will, our home. You know, that is the sort of man that I'm married to. He was wonderful. But she had carried on living independently for an amount of time. But then I'd said to my sister, no, we can't put her in a home. But I developed a rota between us to share the care. So it meant that I would go down to Cornwall, stay in Mum's house for a week, looking after her for a week, supposedly with my sister helping and supporting. It didn't actually work out like that, but I would look after her for a week in Cornwall. And then I would bring her back to my house for 2 weeks. So that meant my sister had 2 complete weeks with no mum at all. So I had all the care here for 2 weeks, and then I would drive back down there and spend another week with her, looking after her, and then I would come home on my own and I would get 2 weeks off. So it meant that every 6 weeks I would have Mum for 4 weeks and look after. So I'd look after her for 4 weeks, and then I'd have 2 weeks on my own, and my sister out of every 4 weeks. It was the same. It worked out fair. And so we were doing this for a long, long period of time, doing this back and forward. And we actually got Mum to a stage where she was pretty much living independently towards the end. And then my sister, I got a call from my sister. I think it must have been about the October. And she said, Mum's in hospital. She keeps being sick. So we couldn't cope with her, we being her and her husband. I can't remember if they were actually married at the time or not. I can't remember when exactly they... But anyway, they together took her to the hospital. And next thing I know, there's a call that she's had a procedure that's gone very wrong. So Neil and I go down to the hospital in Cornwall, and we had a talk. One of the doctors came in to try and explain what had happened, and basically she's had, they've done a camera investigation where they put a camera trying to go down to the stomach to see what was going on. But she had, unbeknownst to them, she had like pockets in her esophagus, and the camera had caught in one of these pockets. It had ruptured it, so she now had a hole going from her esophagus through to her windpipe, which meant that anything that went into her mouth had a direct route to her lungs. Well, I came away from that conversation and did a lot of research. I mean, luckily online you can find out most things. And I learned through doing that is pretty much unsurvivable. There is really not any hope of, especially she was 87, so that wouldn't have helped at the time. But in the hospital, they kept saying to Mum, no, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, it'll be all right, it'll be all right, it'll be all right. We then had a 10-week period where I'm backwards and forwards, because I couldn't just stay down there, because, you know, I've got my life's here. But as fast as I was coming back, you know, I was coming back for a week or a couple of days and then driving back down there again. And all the time trying to visit Mum and to keep her spirits up, knowing that she was dying. And you know, wrestling with my conscience and thinking, should I tell her? But then I thought, well, what's to be gained? What is to be gained by telling her that this has killed her? She desperately wanted to go home, and she was talking all the time about going home for Christmas. But although my sister and I had spoken a lot about taking her home and nursing her at home, and I would have moved in with her if I had to, and Neil would have just had to take on whatever needed taking on here. But because she needed such specialist nursing, there was no way they were going to allow her out of hospital into our care. This actually went on for 10 really long weeks. And it was just so traumatic, this whole thing, going backwards and forwards. On top of everything else, it was 2010. So it was the year we'd had 29 and 2010. They were really bad snow years. So 2010, I'm having to go down and stay in her house because it's closer to the hospital than I am here. From here it would be a 3-hour drive each way, and I couldn't do that on my own in one day. So I was having to go down there and stay at her house. But they'd moved her from the hospital where the accident happened to a hospital in Devon. So I was kind of having to go all the way to Cornwall and then back an hour in this direction to get to the hospital. But then sleeping at her house, so all in this terrible snow, which anybody who knows Cornwall will know that the roads at the best of times are like driving a roller coaster along the coastal roads. You know, they're just up and down, and they are treacherous in this snow. It was so bad that Mum's house was on the top of a hill, and my sister was coming with me on a lot of the visits, and we were she was coming over because we were going to go in the same car. So she was coming over in the morning, but her car didn't have a strong enough engine to make it up the hill in the snow. So I was having to drive down and picking her up at the bottom of the hill, and she'd leave her car at the bottom. And then we could only stay with Mum for a certain amount of time because we had to time it that we'd get back. Although the sun would be out during the day and the snow might melt a little bit, I had to make sure that I was back before it froze too badly that I couldn't get back up the hill in the evening, you know, because I was feeding her cats and staying in her house. And this just went on for week after week after week. It was about a week before Yule. And that coming Yule was obviously the winter solstice. It was a full moon that day. It was a blood moon, and it was the first lunar eclipse in 370 odd years. Something about that told me that my mum would die that day. And I said to Neil, I am certain she will die that day. So I had spoken to my son's then girlfriend and said, would you come with me for a week down to mum's, you know, and stay with me at mum's, because I'm pretty sure that's when it's going to happen. And so, bless her heart, she kind of dropped everything and came with me. And that whole week, almost every day, we were getting calls because my sister was liaising with the hospital, and every day she would ring me and she'd say, it's going to be today. They think it's going to be today. We've got to get there. We've got to go now. So we'd all kind of rush as fast as we could, get to the hospital, go in, sit the whole day in the hospital. Mum was, at this stage, she was very, very poorly. She'd developed pneumonia. She wasn't at all well. She hadn't had anything to eat or drink for, it was 10 weeks between the accident happening and her passing away. So it was over 9 weeks by this stage. You know, she was even given these horrible cardboard vomit bowls and told to just, any saliva in her mouth she was supposed to spit out rather than swallow. It was just an absolute nightmare situation. And as I say, day after day after day after day, we would get the call, it's going to be today, we'll go in, and all the time I'm thinking, it's going to be Yule. I know it's going to be Yule. So the week went on, and Yule came. We went in that morning. I don't know that they'd actually said it that morning, but we went in, and as she was in a side room, at least they had given her a little bit of privacy in a side room. And I said to her, hello Mum, as you do. I said, how are you feeling? And she looked at me and she said, dreadful. And that was the last word she ever spoke. And then it was probably about mid-afternoon she passed away. So I had lost my dad and my mum on the winter solstice, on Yule, 3 years apart. And for me, that's pretty much done me. You know, I don't want anything to do with Christmas anymore, and Yule is just that sad time. We do, on the winter solstice, go to the Long Barrow, where I have my mum and dad's ashes interred. We don't go for them, but we go because the Long Barrow is aligned to the midwinter sunrise. So it's something that we would do as pagans, even if mum and dad weren't there. But as they are, it's a time when we go and we honour our ancestors, and now they have taken their place amongst the ancestors. That's part of it. And so, as I say, I just don't have it in me to be happy and outgoing. And, you know, Yule now is getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning, doing a very long drive, getting to the Long Barrow. We'll do the ritual at the Long Barrow. There is normally a Yule ritual at the Long Barrow, and then we turn around, we come home, and by the time we get home we're absolutely exhausted. You know, we've got no time or inclination to do anything else. And so that is the sad story of why I don't do Yule. But then there is one footnote to it all. This all happened in 2007 and 2010. So, but then 5 years ago, Neil's dad was very, very ill, and we sadly lost him on the 7th of December. Not quite Yule, not quite Christmas. It was the 7th of December, but at this time of year in the UK, you usually have to wait for a couple of weeks to get a date for the funeral, because normally it's their busiest time of year. So the actual funeral was Christmas Eve. the funeral director who was organising the funeral had tried to persuade the family to include carols, Christmas carols, as part of the service. And although it's Neil's dad, it's Neil's family, it's not really my decision to make, but I absolutely put my foot down and said no. Because I just thought that if we allowed that to happen, then in future years, anytime his mum or his sister hears that carol, or Neil or myself, anytime we heard that carol, we would be immediately back to his dad's funeral. So I said, no, I think it is a really, really bad idea. But, you know, Christmas Eve will always now be the day that we said goodbye to Ted. And so Christmas to me is, sadly, it's not even good telly anymore. You know, it used to be years ago that you would have good things on the TV. I've got no idea what I'm going to do this year. You know, I haven't even looked at the TV the last few years. There seem to be more and more and more repeats. I won't go anywhere, I won't do anything. You know, we have had odd years since I gave up Christmas. To me, Christmas these days is we'll do a roast dinner. We don't even do a Christmas dinner anymore because I ruined that for myself. It was several years ago. I went shopping on Boxing Day because they were selling off Christmas produce cheap, and you know, I'd emptied out my freezer all ready to go and take advantage of the cheap deals, and I managed to get 11 large family-sized turkeys for £5 each, which is incredibly cheap. And I thought, well, even though I don't like turkey, if you come on hard times, it's food, it's a meal, I'll just have to get on with it. And so the turkeys were in the freezer for quite a long time, but then there came a time when we did fall on hard times and we did have to eat the turkeys. And I am never going to eat turkey again. I cannot bear even the thought of turkey for dinner. So nowadays we'll have a roast beef or a leg of lamb or something. You know, we'll maybe do a roast dinner. You know, as I say, we have over the years. I think there was one year we had. I think we had Neil's mum and dad here for a Christmas dinner one year where I was just still being a bit bar humbug, but I said, all right, you know, as a concession, we'll get together for the dinner. And since his dad's died, I think we had his mum and his sister over one year as well. But to me, that's all it is these days, is a roast dinner. I don't do any presents. And I had actually put in a rule about no presents going right back as far as my 40th birthday, so that's 25 years ago. When I turned 40, I had an absolute rule, no more presents. I have everything that I want. If there's anything that I do want, then I will get it for myself, I'll choose it for myself, and I'll pay for it myself. And I can't bear the thought of people spending their hard-earned money on buying me things I don't want. And so I get really very stressed now if people do try to give me presents. And I think I've just about brought that to a stop. Because it doesn't give me joy to receive presents. You know, it stresses me. I get really, really upset when people are trying to give me things that they think, when I've got a house full of clutter and I'm struggling to get rid of things, when other people are just giving me more things to get rid of. So maybe that's just me being ungrateful, but it is what it is. Anyway, I've talked all of this time, so I'm going to need a cup of tea now. But that is the reason why Santa doesn't come to my house anymore. The tree doesn't go up. There's no more decorations. There's no cards. There's a roast dinner, but it's like a Sunday roast rather than a Christmas dinner. But I hope that you enjoy your Christmas, because it upsets me that Christmas does seem to be on the decline everywhere. Just because I don't do it doesn't mean to say I want it to stop. I would like it to go back to the magic that it once was for me, and I hope that you experience the magic that I used to experience. Anyway, take care. Lots of love. Bye.